and she will be presenting the topic. Sorry. Innovative teaching methods for English language learners. Mrs. Fasi, we're ready to listen, ma.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy World Teachers Day. And it's been a global celebration all across the world and giving honor to whom honor is due. So congratulations and thank you for being a teacher. This is on the platform of English Language Teachers Association of Nigeria, ELTAN, and our own way of celebrating the World Teachers Day. So thank you for joining us, and we'll just kick off and hope that others will join us. So I'm going to be talking on innovative techniques for English language teaching. And I'll try to share my screen so that we can just have these discussions for the next few minutes, believing that I have English language teachers in the house. So moderator, please, I'll need you to give me sharing rights so that I can share my screen. I can't share my screen now. So if you enable me to share my screen, that will be fine. Please let me know, ma.
Doing that right away, ma.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening, sir. Dr. Ken Edegbe, it's nice to have you here. Okay, thank you, ma'am. All right. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
I think we all can.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so let's just rub minds together on what we need to do to move English language teaching forward as the teachers that are ready to fill the gap, because obviously there's a wide gap in terms of World Teachers Day for this year, when it says the teachers we need for the education we want, the global imperative to reverse the teacher shortage. Yeah, so why do we have teacher shortage? It's not because we don't have individuals that are willing to teach. The shortage is actually in terms of competence. Competence in terms of our delivery methods, in terms of adequate knowledge, in terms of the right skills, in terms of the right attributes to deliver our content appropriately. So this evening, I'm going to be sharing with us what we can accommodate. There's a whole lot in this topic. In fact, when I saw this topic, it just occurred to me that this is not something that can be done on a Zoom meeting. Yeah, because this is an entire course on its. Someone were to write a book with this topic, it will run into several pages. But let's see how we can share and rub minds and move forward. Perhaps one or two things that we can glean from here this evening. My topic is innovative teaching methods for English language learners. And of course, we know that for there to be learners, there definitely are teachers. I came across this. It's not a new statement. Many of us know it already. And it's the reality of at times, like it or not, all teachers are teachers of language. So this is not just about English language teachers. It is because regardless the subject you're teaching, whether you're teaching mathematics or biology or geography, any subject at all, especially for those of us in this part of the world where English happens to be the language of instruction, we will see that all teachers are indeed teachers of language. Because there's no how you would be teaching any other subject using the medium of English that a child would have a wrong spelling and the teacher wouldn't be quick to correct that. So invariably, all teachers are teachers of language. But we want to streamline and look at English language teaching in particular. So for this first session on this Zoom call, we're going to try to explore some innovative approaches to English language teaching. How was it before now? Where were we? Where are we? And where are we likely to be leading up to? And then we'll briefly look at various approaches to English language teaching, and then are there some practical usage of some techniques in English language teaching? Okay, so let's just move on. Yeah, so generally speaking, whatever method or technique of language teaching that any teacher adopts, it is based on these factors and many more. So our language teaching is actually a result of our perceptions of what we need to do. The nature and the role of language varies, and as such, in our different contexts, we would need to determine what exactly do we want to achieve? What's the nature? What's the role of English to you in your context? So I know that we have people joining from various parts of Africa, various parts of Nigeria, and of course, the nature and role of English language in our various environments vary. Some of us are teachers in urban areas where there's a high demand for English language competence. Some of us might be teaching in rural areas where our learners are struggling to even comprehend the language at all. So what's going to happen in our classrooms will be a factor of the nature and role of English language in your peculiar environment and circumstances. The second thing that is going to affect how we view English language teaching is the nature of language teaching itself. Are we as educators, as teachers, as English language teachers, are we familiar with the process of learning? How do people learn? How people learn will determine how we teach. If we're teaching young learners, the approach is going to be different from if you're teaching in the secondary school system because the needs will vary. If you're teaching at the tertiary level, it will still be another set of learners. Now, this again will be a factor of the level of proficiency of the learners in your classroom. You could be teaching young learners, but they may be very proficient in English based on their exposure. And at the same time, you could have a class of adult learners that are at the beginner's level in terms of their proficiency. So several things happen to the ways we teach and how we teach. Thirdly, the goals and objectives in teaching. Why are you teaching English? What do your learners hope to achieve with their competency in English language? So it's a different ball game if you're preparing students to take external exams, maybe WAEC or IGCSE or NECO, and that will be different from the goals and objectives of someone who is preparing students to write IELTS. That will still be different from someone who is teaching English for business purposes, or English for special purposes, or English as a foreign language. So the goals and objectives of teaching also determines the approach that we're going to be using in our classrooms. The next factor that determines the way we teach is the type of syllabus that we're delivering. So your syllabus determines the extent to which you go with the language. But whichever syllabus we're running, one thing that is at the bottom line of all of them is that competence is the goal. The linguistic level of your learners, like I said before, is a major factor to consider. And finally, what resources and materials are available to us as are what will determine how we present English language in our classrooms. Several approaches have been used to deliver English language in classrooms over time, ever since the earliest connection of the native speaker with those of us who are learning English as a second language, dating back to the post-colonial era. There have been several approaches to English language teaching. Of course, the oldest of these approaches will be the grammar translation method, where the native speaker and then the works based on the existing indigenous language. And the grammar translation method came to be where the approach to English language teaching was trying to translate the indigenous language into English language. It is a method that is still in use in language teaching. You only need to get into a French as a second language class, and then you will see the grammar translation method at work. Because if a French teacher had to teach in an, can we please mute, can we please mute, please? There's a lot of background noise. Moderator, maybe you can mute participants, please. Thank you, ma'am. So the grammar translation method simply tries to translate the structures from the indigenous languages into English language. And from my findings, it seems to be the oldest approach to English language teaching. But of course, because all the pragmatics, the way the language works are very different. English is very different from our indigenous languages. For many of our languages in West Africa, our languages are tonal. That really doesn't, the English language does not work like that when it comes to lexis. And then even the grammar pattern is quite different. So if any of us speaks our indigenous language, I'm just going to be asking you to think of a proverb in your own language and try to translate it verbatim, word for word, into English language and see if the statement that you come up with obeys the grammatical patterns of English. Those are the challenges of the grammar translation method. Other methods that came into being had to do with the structural approach, which was a focus on grammar, which incidentally seems to be the traditional approach to English language teaching And a whole lot of teachers are still stuck with a structural approach to English language teaching. A lot of English lessons are basically grammar lessons. And that's why we need to have this discussion so that we can see what else we need to do. Of course, there's the functional approach where you're looking at the functional exponents of English language and you're trying to teach learners how to express functions. What do you say when you're introducing yourself? How do you express your likes and dislikes? What is the right expression to apologize? What do you do when you need to greet? How do you say it when you need to take an excuse? Those are all functional approaches to English language teaching. And of course, the functional approach thrives on a situational approach where the teacher tries to create a model and then there is a role play and you're trying to use the language of the context. The lexical approach was a focus on lexical items, the vocabulary of English language, the multi-word verbs, the phrasal verbs, the idiomatic expressions, the denotative and connotative meaning, and all the other things that goes with lexis. These are all approaches that have been used in English language. The communicative language teaching approach, which right now seems to be what is playing out in most of our classrooms. But many teachers are yet to understand how it works, and we'll be talking some more about it. Of course, there's the CLIL approach, which has to do with content and language integrated learning, especially in areas where English is not the language of instruction or English is used, okay, to teach other subjects. There's the humanistic approach where we try to look at language teaching from the humane angle of it. Yes, of course. So it's not just about having a head knowledge, it's about the usage of it. And of course, putting all of this together leads us to the eclectic approach. And I think that is where the 21st century English language teacher needs to be. But the eclectic approach simply is about knowing the right approach to use in every situation. Now, why do we teach English language? What do we want to achieve? What's the essence? Communicative language teaching says that there should be a focus on the skills, the language skills, because ultimately that is what language is used for. There's no point understanding the grammatical function of a particular expression if the learners cannot make meaning of that expression when they are listening to somebody speaking. Why would I want to know whether it is an adverbial phrase or an adjunct or a prepositional clause or whatever it is if I cannot express myself when I'm writing? So we need to actually be rethinking our focus as English language teachers. What really are we striving to achieve? Is it for our learners to have a mastery of the language skills, or is it about them just knowing the grammar of English language? So these are the questions that are begging for answers from English language teachers. And it's something that we need to be thinking about so that we can meet the needs of the 21st century learners. Basically, every language does all of these functions. You are either expressing yourself by speaking or writing, or you are receiving information via listening or reading. So every form of grammar that we're teaching must lead to your learners achieving the skills. Whatever aspect of phonology that we're teaching is about improving their speaking skills. So ultimately, this is what we want to achieve. The fact that we have broken down the language into its component elements does not take away the essence of the learning. So whatever we're teaching, this is what we want our students to be able to achieve at the end of the day. We want them to be able to listen to conversations, to dialogues, whether it is from a native speaker or from whoever, and they can make sense out of what they are listening. So we should be thinking of teaching listening in the classroom. There's no point having English language lessons if our learners cannot read and comprehend what they are reading. Of course, speaking is the skill for expressions, and that's a skill that every 21st century, in fact, everyone existing in this age must have great speaking skills. And of course, writing, that's something we can't run away from as long as you're literate. So this is the focus. It is about the skills. So what do we do with it? So if we're going to be thinking about innovative strategies, innovative techniques in English language teaching, I've just put out a few things that I think we need to be doing as educators. So the first thing I have here is for our English language classes, can we have more meaningful and authentic language use in our classrooms? What do I mean by that? Okay, so I happen to know that a lot of us as teachers seem to be so dependent on our textbooks, on our English language materials. Now, I am always going to be saying that the author of that textbook that you're using in the class did not quite have your class in mind. So most textbooks are generic. It will be up to each teacher to adapt the text that they need for their class. So in the course of adapting your text, you want to be thinking of what matters to the learners in your peculiar situation. If you're using a textbook that's the comprehension passage, even though the textbook is designed for students in senior secondary class 1, SS1, but the learners in your class are still struggling with reading simple sentences, then that textbook is not of any meaning to the learners in that context. So if you're going to be a creative and innovative English language teacher, you're going to be thinking of how can you adapt the materials that you have to make it meaningful and authentic. If I go on to the next one, talking about authentic materials, what do we mean? Authentic materials are those things that perhaps they were not originally designed for your classroom, but that is language in use. Everything that you're doing in the classroom is about preparing your learners for the larger society. So making your language innovative, creative, is about you helping your learners see how language works in the society in which they live. And the best way to do that is to bring in those authentic materials, bring them into your classrooms. Let your learners have a look at it. You want to use newspapers. It may even be that you are starting from advertorials in the newspapers. Depending on the level of your learners, a whole lot of times the language in adverts are usually very simple. So your learners can see, oh, okay, so this is why I need to understand how this works. This is how language works within the environment. You can use flyers. Flyers were not designed for the classroom, but they are very good materials for your classroom, authentic materials, because a whole lot of times the flyers are very appealing, they're colorful, they're appealing to the eyes, it sparks interest. That's what we want to achieve by our innovation in the classroom. It's about getting our learners interested in what we're doing. And with that, you can get them to understand why they need to work with you and be better in their language skills. You can actually use news bulletins. Thank God for Android phones and WhatsApp. You only need to connect that to maybe your external speaker, and your learners can hear it. You can do a comparative analysis. You can get your learners to listen to CNN News and compare it with Wazobia. And then they will see how language works. Those are ways of driving learning rather than sticking with the textbooks. There are a lot of things that we need to be doing as teachers that will make our lessons really interesting, engaging, and innovative. Download a clip of Wazobia News with another one on BBC or on CNN. Get into your classroom, play the two, and then let your learners make a comparison. You can use recorded speeches, conversations. For the write-ups, you can use diaries, actual records, so that you're teaching them different kinds of writings. You can bring in your letters. When I teach letter writing, I'm sifting through my own collection of actual letters. Maybe my letters of employment, a letter of complaint, or stuff like that. Bring it into the classroom and use that. Let your learners see the difference in the structure of an official letter as a formal letter, different from an email. You can print out an actual email to, to exemplify, non-formal writing. Okay? So there's so many things that we can do with authentic materials. We only need to be creative about it. If you want to use the news items, the storybooks, the novels, there's language all around us. Let's be encouraged to be creative with the way we bring it into the classroom. I don't think it is interesting to teach grammar in isolation. And that's why I really like the idea of authentic material. Every form of grammar you're teaching can have authentic materials to support them. In the course of your teaching, let's use language the way language is used. It's only when you're soliloquizing that you're speaking to yourself. Otherwise, language in use is about communication, is about talking with other people. And that is why in the English language lessons, we need to have a lot of interaction. Let your learners have adequate practice. Let them do pair work. Let them do group work. A lot of mingling activities, classroom surveys, and then they can practice how to speak. And while they are doing that, the teacher is also listening to what they are doing. There are a whole lot of interactive activities that you can use to teach almost every topic in English language. So let's explore some of these things rather than just getting the learners to stick with the textbook and then they are doing only the exercises in the textbook as individual work. That's not how language works. We won't be getting the best out of that. And that's why we need to be considering some of these other English language teaching strategies. Some of the things we could be doing is role play. This is one way of doing situational learning. Create the role play, pre-teach the vocabulary for the role play. You want to talk about registers, and then you get your learners to engage in that. It's usually very engaging. And then the learners can use the language because that's what we want to achieve. It's about them using the language. Play games in class. I know that a lot of teachers struggle with this because for us, it appears as if we are not serious. We don't see games in the classroom as being serious teaching. But interestingly, for the 21st century learner, those are their best ways of learning. There are a whole lot of educational games. Get onto the resources. For many of us, the Teaching English resources by British Council, they're all over the place. There's fantastic things that we can do on those websites. Please get into the websites. Maybe our moderator will be sharing the website with us because I know that there's a whole lot of interaction between the British Council and ELTAN. So use the resources. The resources are available. You can have simulations in your class, true life applications, what I call the real purpose for communicating. We can explore that. Storytelling are fantastic ways of getting learners to use the language. I'm not talking about storytelling as a way of teacher occupying the learners. Okay, children, you take turns to tell your stories while I quickly grade these exercise books. No, that's not innovative. Storytelling as a classroom activity, as an English language teaching activity, while the teacher is involved in it. How can you do great storytelling? Jigsaw storytelling. Perhaps somebody will want to try it out in their class. How does jigsaw storytelling work? So the teacher gives the introduction to the story. It's just a line of the story. And then the learners take turns to supply one sentence to continue the story. And you have a very active class. So the teacher is just starting out the story. It was a wet evening, and then the children go on. Okay, so hopefully, if I have a few minutes, we're going to be doing a quick jigsaw storytelling so that every one of us can have a feel of how this works in our classroom. And then I'm going to be asking that while you're in your classroom as an innovative English language teacher, can we please play down the idea of accuracy? Yes, we know that grammar is important, but honestly, depending on your environment, depending on your scenario, sometimes you have learners that are grappling with even the very basic words, and yet we're talking about correctness. There's time for everything. Let them acquire the elements of the language, and then we can now start to focus on whether they are grammatically accurate or not. While you're in the classroom as a teacher, an innovative English language teaching approach is to consider the purpose for communicating. When you give your learners tasks in the class, you can either decide to use real purpose versus what we call imaginary purpose. What do I mean by that? So when you are reliant on your textbook, for most of your lessons, you're going to be doing imaginary purpose. What are the kind of questions that you get in your textbooks, especially when it comes to your essay writings, when it comes to your speech writing? So you're going to have questions. Imagine that you are the head prefect of the school. Write a speech that you will be delivering at the valedictory program. But I'm not the head prefect. That's an imaginary purpose. Yes, they are good, but can we flesh it up with some real life purpose? What do students do in real life? Students write reports. Can you get them to write reports in your class? An incident happened. You were involved in that incident. Write your report so that they can relate with some of these things and see how it works. Rather than you are the commissioner and those things are very far and remote from our learners. Yes, they will get there, but can we start to help them to see that they have a need for the language? Because sometimes the students can't even relate with their own personal needs. So all they think they're doing in your class is preparing for WAEC and IGCSE. They don't realize that they would need to continue using language all through their life, and especially English language in particular, that is, of course, the global language of communication. So let's consider our roles as teachers if we're really going to be innovative English language teachers. Our role is not just the provider, the supplier of information. If you're going to be innovative, you are more of a facilitator. What does that mean? It's about creating an environment. It's about creating opportunities for your learners to have a feel, to use the language, to have an opportunity to make presentations, to have an opportunity in your classroom to speak, to have opportunities to listen, opportunities to read, opportunities to write, and then you can actually see them getting better. When you create such opportunities, please monitor. Monitor what your learners are doing. Don't be the kind of teacher that gives learners tasks and then you just go to your corner and you are fiddling with your phone. That's not being innovative. Monitor what your learners are doing, assess their progress, check to know what errors they are making, see how you can help them to do better, and then you're providing them with feedback. That's the cycle, and that's what innovative teachers do. And when you do that, you will see that naturally you will have less TTT. What's TTT? Teacher talk time. In a whole lot of our English language classrooms, out of our 40 minutes, many of us as teachers, we are talking for 35. So, when are the students going to practice? When are they going to have a mastery? When are you going to give them an opportunity for them to practice what they are learning? The reverse is the case. We need to have more students talk time if we're going to be using these innovative strategies. It's the students who are learning the language. Can you please give them the opportunity to learn? And while they are doing that, please lay emphasis on the skills, as we have said earlier, the skills of listening. For many of our classrooms, that does not exist. Many of us do not teach listening as a skill. It is assumed that learners are listening, even while they are simply hearing. Listening is a learned skill. Please, let's focus on it. Teach your learners how to read. Give them opportunities to read in the classroom. When they write, go through the writing process and help them to be great writers. When your learners are speaking, help them to be better speakers. Teach them the skills of public speaking. And then perhaps we can get better learners of English language. All right, so just to summarize as I round up, so innovative English language teaching expects that the classroom is learner-centered. We cannot say that enough. So make real communication the focus of language learning. I've already spoken on that. That's what we do with the skills. Provide opportunities for your learners to experiment and try out what they know. Be tolerant of your learners' errors. The errors simply indicate that they are learning. They are trying to build up on their own communicative competence. Many of us as teachers, we are not tolerant of our learners' errors. Empathize with them. Remember how it was for you when you were learning how to teach. And please help them, support them. Provide opportunities for them to develop their accuracy and fluency while speaking. Link the different skills. Link all the skills because that is how it works. On this Zoom session, you have had to listen to me, you have had to read my slides, and then in a little while, we're going to be speaking. So rather than telling them the grammar rules, you can help them to discover the grammar rules. How does this work? Let them see how grammar works in real life situations. If you have a text to use and you're teaching your learners adverbial clauses, look out for a passage where there are adverbial clauses. Help your learners to identify the clauses. They will see it in use and then it will make more sense. It will make more meaning rather than teaching adverbials in isolation. I'm going to pause here for a while so that we can have a quick practice of how to use the storytelling, jigsaw storytelling. So I'm going to start it, and each person is going to contribute one sentence to the story, and then we're going to build up the story. I hope we're ready. Please unmute yourselves. Unmute yourselves. We're going to be doing our storytelling. Right? Okay. So this is how it works. I can see your names. So I'm just going to I'll call out your name and then you will contribute your own sentence to the story. Everybody, please unmute yourself. We want to do our storytelling practice for the classroom. I'm waiting to have you unmuted. Okay. All right. So let's start. So please listen for your name. I'll call your name and then you will contribute your one sentence to build our story. Let's see if we can go through with this. Okay. So let's start. It was a hot, dry, and sunny day. Abiola Shobowale, your sentence? Abiola Shobowale, you muted yourself. I wanted you to contribute to that story.
I just joined, so I might not.
It's all right.
I just joined
okay. Yes, we're just starting the activity. We're doing jigsaw storytelling for those who are just joining. It's jigsaw storytelling. So I'm going to start the sentence, and then when I call your name, you're going to add up your own sentence that is going to fit into this story. So I want to use this storytelling, this jigsaw storytelling, to teach coherence and cohesion. All right. So you're just going to add up a sentence, and then the next person, when I call out your name, you will add up the next sentence, and then we'll go on and on like that. So let's try it out. Okay. So let's start. It was a very hot and sunny day. Ronkai Waini, next. Is Ronkai there? Okay, Victoria, you want to give us the next sentence to make the story?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Victoria went without her sunglasses.
Very good. Boma Karibo, your turn.
I didn't hear the last person's statement.
Okay.
I only heard you.
Without her sunglasses.
Because it felt so sweaty after all the heat of that day.
Thank you. Adedoto Alunge.
What was the last sentence, please?
Sorry?
I couldn't really grab. I can hear chewing, so I couldn't really grab what the last person said. What was the last sentence?
Oh dear. Okay. All right. I think we have an idea of how this is supposed to run now. Okay, so let's start all over again. Let's start all over again. All right, so this is virtual. Please try to be audible. Okay, yeah, so that we can enjoy this. Okay, so I'm starting another story. One morning, Mr. Jones brought out his bicycle from his shed. Abiola, your turn.
Can you come again? Sorry. One morning. Can you come again, please?
One morning, Mr. Jones brought out his bicycle from his shed.
From his shed.
Can I take that?
You're just giving
Because
us the
he wants
next
to go to
sentence.
church.
We're building up a
Because he
story.
wants to go to church.
Okay.
Ronke, your turn. Is Ronke there?
Okay, well, I am Brian, and I just added because he wants to go to church.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So, Adedoto, can you continue from there?
The bicycle was dirty.
You haven't completed the sentence.
The bicycle was dirty and it needed to be washed.
Boma, continue, please.
Alas, it wasn't only dirty, but it was all rusty. Could he use it at all today? Could he use it at
Oluchi,
all
go ahead.
today?
No thanks to the spiders, the bicycle had lots of cobwebs.
Nice. Yeah. Mabel, are you there? Unmute yourself.
Oh, I hate cobwebs. He thought aloud. How do I clean this bicycle now?
Chidima, can you please unmute yourself? Is Chidima there? Okay, Victoria, your turn. Victoria, unmute yourself.
Hello. I was having network
Yes.
problems, but I didn't hear
Oh
the last
dear.
sentence.
Oh dear.
I
Caroline,
didn't
did
hear
you
the
get the last sentence? Caroline, are you there?
I'm here. What was the last sentence, please?
So the last sentence was whether Mr. Jones could ride his bicycle because of the cobwebs.
Oh.
I would
So should
rather
I
go.
go or is
Let me. Okay.
okay?
I would rather get back home to change to another bicycle, said Mr. John.
Oh, yes, Victoria.
But he remembered he had no other bicycle, so he had to find a way to clean it up.
Boma, what would you say? Boma Igani?
Oh, I said because when you started the conversation, I was the person who made the
Yeah,
first
just give us
submission.
the next sentence. Just give us the next sentence. Uh-oh. Stephen, welcome. Are you there? Next sentence. Stephen, welcome.
Mr. Jones was worried he was running out on time. He was running out of time.
Nice. Okay. Abel, you want to add up to the story?
Hello. Yeah. Stephen is there.
Yes.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay. Even when he opted to clean his bicycle, he still couldn't use it. So he had to resort by taking a walk.
Okay. Yes, Ronke, continue from there.
Then right behind him was the honk of a car. The pastor was heading down the church.
Okay. Chidima, your turn. Okay, Boma Karibo.
The honk
Well,
really
yes,
got me.
he just remembered. Well, yes, he just remembered that there was a gallon of oil behind the door he could use to oil all the rust away.
Yeah, Abiola, are you ready now?
I think I am.
Yes. Go ahead and add your sentence to the story.
He took the bike like that and took it to where it will be washed.
All right. Okay. Yes, who is here to take a turn? Yes, Sally, Elton.
He was happy that the pastor was going to church, so he quickly joined him.
Chidima, are you ready? Is it there? Oh, okay. Chidima doesn't seem to be there. Oluchi, Francis Uko, are you there? Oh, okay. Somebody is saying the host isn't allowing them to unmute. Host, can you give us rights to unmute? All right, well, let's not take all of the time. There are other presentations, but this is just a way, one of the ways you can engage your learners. It's usually very interesting and engaging. It's the jigsaw storytelling. You can do it as a group activity. You can do it in written form. You can do it orally. In written form, you will get your learners in groups, seated maybe in their circles, and then they start, somebody supplies the introductory sentence. It's really, really nice to teach cohesion and coherence. And then they can build up the stories. And honestly, by the time they are done with their group presentations, you bring the stories together, you can assess their skills. So there are several things that we can do to engage our learners and help them to really do well in English language teaching. Thank you very much for your time. And I think that's where I would like to draw the curtains.
Thank you so much.
Madam
It was so
Sani.
engaging.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Fasui.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful
We
section.
really appreciate your presentation. It was really lively. Thank you very much.
Amazing session. Thank you so much. Amazing session. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
While Mrs. Fasui was on, the president of ELTAN had joined in, but unfortunately he has gone out again. We also had the former president of ELTAN, Professor Mrs. Ibireke Maduako. She had also joined in and had gone out. Here with us is the Secretary, English Language Teachers Association of Nigeria, Mr. Abel Ochika. He's here with us. Thank you very much for joining in. Unfortunately, the next presenter is not available. He's unavoidably unable to join us, so I'll be taking his part. So the next part of the presentation is integrating technology into English language teaching. When we talk about technology, sometimes it seems like it's a very far-fetched concept. Can you hear me, please? Can everyone hear
Yes.
me?
We can hear you. We can hear
Yes,
you,
we
but
can
we
hear
need.
you.
Okay.
Yes, but we need to mute ourselves now.
Yes, please. Integrating technology into English language teaching. When we talk about technology, a lot of people look at it as a very far-fetched concept, like something that is not possible in our African context. So what is technology, or what is integrating technology into English language teaching? It refers to the use of various technological tools, devices, and digital resources to enhance the teaching and learning of English language. So this approach acknowledges the role of technology in our modern world and leverages it to make language learning more engaging, effective, accessible, thus enhancing language instruction, practice, and assessment. There's so much available to us in this century that we can use to make teaching a lot more effective, a lot more practical, especially because English language seems to be an abstract subject. The way we teach English language, when we talk about nouns, it seems like the students don't know what we're talking about. When we talk about abstract nouns, the learners find it difficult to understand us. How can we make this better? How can we make this concept to teach in the English language a lot more easier so they can relate with this? I'd like to talk about a few of these technological tools that we can use. I'll be starting with digital learning platforms. A digital learning platform allows access to a complete library of online resources. The softwares here are structured in such a way that it makes learning easily accessible to learners. We can incorporate so much into these digital learning platforms that we can use to engage our learners, and we can use them anywhere and at any time. We do not need a laptop in all cases. With just our smartphone or our tablet, we can use these tools to make learning more engaging. We can talk about the Google Classroom. It's very common, and I think it's free. It's used to make learning easier. During the COVID-19 lockdown, many of us had to devise ways of teaching our learners since we cannot meet with them in a live classroom. The Google Classroom supports integration with other educational apps and tools. And it's very simple to create one. We can bring our learners in manually by adding them up, or we can just create a link that we can share with them and they can join. With this learning platform, we can give assignments, we can create quizzes, ask questions, make announcements to our class. It seems like this one is far-fetched because we do not permit phones in secondary school classrooms. So it may be difficult to use these resources, but what other resources can we use to make our lessons more engaging, more effective? I'd like to talk about simple technological tools we could use. For instance, Mrs. Fasu, you talked about teaching listening. How many of us actually teach listening in our classrooms? These days, it's very difficult with learners not having texts, especially those of us in public schools. How can we teach listening? How can we teach reading? Simple technological tools can make it very easy for us, and it will seem so seamless. Do we have an MP3? If we do not have one, can we ask one of the learners to come with them? And you'll be surprised that 5 or 10 will even volunteer to come with one. Because even though they cannot afford to buy textbooks, they can quickly afford to buy MP3s because they love listening to music. So you can ask one of them to come with one, fully charged. And then as a teacher, what do? You could record a passage, or perhaps generate a passage online and turn it into speech that you can play to your learners, they listen to it. For those of us in public schools who do not have access to interactive boards, we can simply write down the questions on the passage on the board. And as they listen to the passage, they can easily identify the answers from the listening that they have done. That's one way we can do it. What about those who have challenges with reading? We could Google up things that we could use for them. For instance, I started school this term, and my learners complained about not being able to spell. That's become a huge challenge for them, because for every other subject, they're unable to take down notes since teachers now dictate. They're in the senior secondary, so teachers don't usually copy notes, they dictate the notes to them, and they find it difficult to cope because they cannot spell. I went online, Googled up some spelling tips, and I gave them. I asked them to write these tips down on cardboards and place them in their class. So each time you come across a word that is difficult for you to spell, you simply look at one of those cardboards and you can tell how to spell that word. That's technology doing the job. I don't have to be there. I don't have to be teaching them every time how to spell a particular word or remind them of these rules. What they have done is always there for them for whatever subjects they are going to learn. Then we also have language learning apps. I don't know how many of us have tried this, but I am familiar with Duolingo. There are so many of them. This Duolingo is one language learning app that allows you to learn any language, and it's not limited to one language. You can learn Spanish, you can learn French, you can learn Italian, as many languages as you want. And one wonderful thing about it is it provides exercises for you to practice that helps you learn faster. It also gives you the opportunity of listening to native speakers using these sentences or expressions, and then you can copy their way of speaking. That's one wonderful thing that technology has done for us. We can also use games. And when we talk about games, it seems like it is difficult. It will take so much time to use them in our class, but you will be surprised that it doesn't take that much time. We don't have to look for far-fetched games. We don't have to look for complicated games. We just use simple games. For instance, I was teaching nouns in my class, and I asked my learners, I told them we're going to play a game now, and we're going to use a song in this game. I start the song, and I mention one type of noun. If I say proper nouns, every other person who is going to give examples of nouns will mention a proper noun, and whoever fails it starts the game again. And in 5 minutes, we're done. They already know all the different types of nouns there are, and they can give examples, which we write down on the board. All of these are simple technological tools that we can use to teach our students. It is important for us as teachers to get familiar with these tools. It makes teaching very easy. How many of us are familiar with using AI to generate lesson notes? Did you know that you could simply ask AI to generate an interactive lesson plan for you? It gives you questions that you can modify to suit your class, to suit your learners, and you can use this to make your lessons more engaging. And the students find it very interesting that you start the lesson this way today, and next time you're using another method to start to teach. It's very resourceful. Since I was not the person that was supposed to present this, I think I'll have to stop here. I'd like to say lastly, though, that integrating technology into our classroom can enhance language acquisition, could increase engagement. It offers flexibility in terms of when and where learning takes place. It is essential, though, that we balance technology with traditional teaching methods to ensure a well-rounded education. Thank you. Please, we are free to ask questions if we have. I think I'll be able to take some questions. Okay. Okay, if there are no questions, we'll be taking our last presenter for the night, and that is Mrs. Karibo. Mrs. Boma Karibo, she's already here with us. She'll be talking on innovative ways to teach literature.
Sorry. What's the question?
Teaching literature in the English classroom. Mrs. Karibo, you are on.
Okay, please, you can mute others so we don't have background noises, please.
Oh, Salome, thank you for that presentation. Sorry, before Mrs. Karibo comes on, I'd like to ask a question, if you don't mind.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, so you talked about using AI, to generate lessons, right?
Yes, please.
Yeah, could you give us maybe an example, like a practical example, on what AI can be used to generate, there are different types. What AI program do you use to generate the lesson plan, and what prompts, can be used to, give the AI specific instruction to generate particular lesson plan.
Okay, let me use an example. Unfortunately, I can't share my screen.
All right.
I use different AIs depending on whichever one that works for me at this particular time. I use OpenAI, that is open.ai. I use Forefront Chat. You can simply type in a prompt. For instance, could you generate a lesson plan for Could you generate a lesson plan for a senior secondary Nigerian class 1 on the topic? Now, I have been specific. I have stated the class, I've stated the type of learners, and I've requested for a lesson plan. But I would go further to say the lesson plan should be interactive. I could also go further to say, kindly give a sentence or two for each point in the lesson plan, and it will give me all of that. That's how I generate some lesson plans. Have I answered your question, Mr. Igani?
Yes, you have. Well done.
Any other questions? Okay, I would also like to add that for oral classes too, we could use technological tools. For instance, do you want to teach intonation patterns? You could look up videos on this in YouTube, and then you connect to your MP3 speaker, and it does the lesson for you. Your learners just listen to the sentences that are being given, and then they practice. They repeat after you, because some of these videos give learners the opportunity to repeat after each sentence that is produced. So they're able to learn the tones. They don't know when it is a rising tone, when it is a falling tone, when it is rise, fall, or when it is fall, rise. And we could also use it for literature classes as well. But I'd like to stop here. So Mrs. Karibo, you are on.
Hello, is anyone here?
Yeah, we're here.
Hello, yeah. Okay. Hello, I think our host has been logged out. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Mrs. Karibo has been on, but she's
Oh,
muted.
Oh, okay.
okay.
I didn't know
Yes,
I
please.
had. Am I on now?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll take it again. It's my topic is innovative ways of teaching literature in the English language classroom. Like we used to call it literature in English. It might be safe to say that teaching is one of the most difficult of arts, and I venture to paraphrase this anonymous quote, which claims that teaching depends on knowledge that is elusive, manifold, and resistant to clear formulation. Remember elusive? Elusive? Remember what we say in local parlance about not being able to break a head open in order to put knowledge in? Yes. And then manifold? Yes, there are many ways to impart knowledge. No clear formulations? Yes. Is it possible to use any particular method of teaching and achieve exact same results, like a laboratory experiment where you carry out these tests and you achieve these results no matter who you are or where you are or with whom you are there? In fact, there may be no one teacher, not even the best, that succeeds with every pupil or student. And there may be no one teacher as well who does not succeed with at least one pupil or student. And so generalizations in teaching as a whole are dangerous. And that brings us to my take. The multifarious approach to teaching, and in this case, teaching literature in the English classroom. Literature in the English classroom, yes. English and literature are like two sides of a coin. One side needs the other to solidify its presence. English needs the appeal and flair of literature to concretize the experience of the learner, invigorating his mind and pulling him out of all shells to make him use the language and use it well if he has been rightly exposed, to the right narratives. Literature also needs English as a vehicle to affect and purge the mind and ultimately the life of a learner in the bid to achieving its vast dimensional purpose as a mirror of the society. As an art, teaching as a whole should not be distilled into a set of rigid rules or prescriptions for behavior, but it ought to be a combination of modifications applicable to different situations of the content and the context. Flexibility and verve are key factors in teaching literature. Yes, it calls for a shedding of our characteristic listlessness if we want to infuse interest in the subject matter. Teaching literature particularly poses a real problem because its effectiveness will depend on the learner's, you would even tell me that. It will depend on the learner's reading and comprehension skills, as well as his ability to decipher meanings below the surface value of words. So there is the need to go beyond words to action, a teaching technique or techniques that would allow learners interact vigorously within even the confines of the classroom. The learning of literature is the learning of the meaning and beauty of living. And so its teaching is the communicating of the significance of human experiences. I'll tell you what George Newell in his paper, Teaching Literature in the Secondary School says. He said, literature offers, he says, I quote, literature offers a vast array of imaginative and intellectual experiences, including a means to self-understanding, as well as an understanding of the cultural communities in which we live, close quote. Literature as a subject of learning covers all reaches and ranges of life. Reed Smith, 1935, asserts this. You know, he asserts that there is no other course whose subject matter can compare with literature in richness, depth, and appeal. So his teaching should embrace different approaches and treatments that will engage learners to appreciate this beauty. Literature takes the young learner beyond his narrow base of life to view broader spheres, drawing personal lessons that last for life. Let his teaching, therefore, carry the whole class along, not anyone behind, so that everyone can fully benefit from experiences that will shelve them from the dangers of society. I'll help you understand some, which you also know, some independence in learning. It would allow students to be able to judge situations and characters in real life and also in fictitious plots of study. Commitment and attendance to classes, because it will help to develop interest in the students. Because the lessons will be so interesting, they would not want to miss any. It will help the students to have good grasp of text, even other texts, not for the subject literature. It will inculcate in students boldness and ability to face life issues, because they know beforehand some outcomes of certain ways of behaving. It would also help students to be able to join teams and have, good knowledge of teamwork. It would help for social interaction, to improve social interaction and promote the understanding of plots, themes, and literary techniques. And so we need to look at some good methods of teaching literature. Some of them, yes, you might have been using, but like I said, my approach is the multifarious one, that for different themes, different aspects of literature, different methods be used. But it really depends on the teacher. Teaching is so reflective of the teacher's personality. You can just look at the teacher, even if it's your first time in the class, and be able to observe well and tell about the person's personality, give certain traits of the teacher's personality. And so, though there may be all these methods I'm going to mention, it behoves the teacher himself to know what to use at what time, and how to dissect knowledge. Like I teach, how I teach the aspect literary devices. I break them down, I break them down and then group them. I have figures of sound, figures of, the figures, I grouped them, and then we take them like that, so that they know that, all these ones, these have to do with sound, in that order. And so some of these methods that we can use in the classroom, not sticking to one particular one, but knowing which aspect of literature will be better taught by what method. Some of the methods, you are very familiar with them, but I just want to bring them up again to you for remembrance. There's the lecture method. This method, though some people regard it as a poor teaching method, but it is quite good when you want to impart information or stimulate interest. You give this information, though it is actually teacher-centered, but you give the information by lecturing. Some people think that there is a fourth wall separating the teacher engaged in this method from the class, that it leaves the student a certain important kind of freedom, giving the mind a chance to wander. But that too can be taken care of by the good teacher who uses this tool effectively. Then, quickly, I'm going through each one very fast. There is a discussion method. There is this discussion method that can be used for some things of literary texts, where you separate the class into groups. You can have small groups, you can have large groups, just to help them, you're trying to foster the understanding of literary texts. Though it might have the situation where some students will be more taxed than others. You have these silent members of groups, But even here, the teacher's role is very important in finding out those kind of students and involving them still. Then there is the quizzing technique. Quizzes are traditional ways to get around students' ignorance. You just pop up the question and then the answer comes. Quizzing. Some can be graded, others should not be. In fact, it is when a quiz isn't graded that you will find students giving honest answers. And they are coming out to really answer and even indicate their areas of ignorance. Quizzes are quite good. Then there is a questioning technique. It's truly a productive one. It can be used to complement the lecture method. You give, it can come in the form of written 5-minute responses to questions posed in a class. Here again, you can grade or ungrade, but allow students to know what you're truly doing and be honest with what you are doing, with what you are asking for. You don't say you are grading and then you don't grade. And you don't say you're not grading and then afterward they get to learn you graded. Then there is the demonstration method. This is like, it's a bit dramatic, a little, just that it is displaying, doing, and telling the students the points of emphasis, and it can be used as a technique within another method. The teacher can use it as an aspect to show, to help students learn about a concept or to outline clearly a particular concept or principle he wishes to teach. The demonstration method should be allowed to build learners' confidence. It should not be used in any way to counter it, and it should emphasize visibility. Demonstrations can be well repeated different times during the class. Then there is the project method. This method is quite individualized, because the learner performs a unit of activity in a natural manner. Well, given that nowadays, students will go and they will not do it individually. They will go and depend on others. Let's find a way to even guard against that. But it actually gives the student a free hand, the learner a free hand, and it makes, learning flexible and autonomous. Then there are field trips, excursions that are taken outside the classroom for the purpose of making relevant observations and also obtaining specific information. They truly help the literature class. They will help, such trips would help to broaden learners' understanding and give general knowledge. And then the things observed can be applied to certain concepts in class. Then there is a discovery or inquiry method, which involves mental processes to be able to mediate or discover concepts and principles, to believe these concepts and principles, and then to use them in activities. Then there is the laboratory method. You will say, what? A laboratory method in a literature class, yes. You know, it might be a science-based approach, but it can also be used to teach literature. The laboratory method actually involves observation, experimentation, and application. So learners can be as individuals or as small groups and be given real materials, actual materials to use, like tape recorders, cassettes, earphones, that they can use to discover some truths from their literary texts as they discuss in the class, and they observe and they experiment and also apply. There is a process approach. This approach just goes to help the learner develop skills through practice. In the process of learning, skills are practiced. It helps mental processes that will help those skills to be inculcated. It helps to develop such processes. It encourages the learner to behave like a mature learner, performing the kind of tasks that will lead to reflective thinking. And it also allows knowledge to be discovered in that manner. Then there is the dramatic method, which is a colorful, lively, and entertaining method that involves a lot of participation, a lot of vigorous movements in the classroom, even in the classroom. Even under this method, we have different aspects of the dramatic method. We have the participatory drama, which helps learners to be participative in the process of learning, in the real action of whether it's a play, whether it's a novelette, whatever storyline, you know, there is, they are learning. They participate in it. They can mime. They can do role playing. Then there is a presentation drama where the learner, you know, say in groups, they come and give presentations. As they are giving presentations, others are observing and taking down notes and asking questions. Or the teacher hands out questions to the students. You ask this question, you ask this question to the group, you know. And that way, we see a lot of information is elicited. Then there is the story drama. This is where the exact, the storyline of texts are acted out, but with the exact dialogues, the written dialogues in those stories, but without the she said and he said. You know, it is as if, oh, I am the queen and you are the king, and we are just saying the things like we are saying them, not from a text. But of course, it will take practicing the text. You know, then there is a melodrama. This is an exaggerated form of drama where it can engender a lot of, you know, entertainment in class and comedy. It can make students really relax and learn well. Come out of their, you know, oh, the difficult times of nowadays, come out of all those situations at home and really practice learning. Then there is interactional and improvisational drama, where you improvise, play along, and instantly create characters and storylines. Then there is the creative dramatics. This one is non-exhibitional, but it's a process-centered form of drama. Participants are encouraged by the class to imagine, enact, and reflect upon human experiences portrayed in prescribed texts under the guidance of the teacher, of course. It is the teacher who guides the group to explore, develop, express, and even communicate ideas, concepts, feelings through dramatic enactments. In creative drama, the group improvises action and dialogue appropriate to the content it is exploring. And it uses the elements of drama to give form and meaning to the experience being gained. Literature has come a long way. Its learning can affect a life for all of lifetime on earth. And so every individual teacher of it should put all his best to ensuring that it is well taught. A doleful teacher in a hurry to leave class for an appointment or what is not it should not be our typical literature teacher. It should be that one that is full of passion, because you are infecting your class, the learners, the young minds, with that passion, with that spirit. Come with that spirit. Before the class, prepare well. Learn what, the different nuances of the story, of whatever text you want to teach, of whatever aspect you want to teach. And know what method with which to approach any one part of it, so that you're well prepared for your class. And you come with that spirit to class. And then you infuse that spirit into your class. And voila, your class takes it up. And you can have young learners who will turn to adults in very near future times that will be very thankful and grateful to you for having impacted their lives so. Why don't you try it? Beloved teacher of literature. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Doma Karibo. That's very interesting, very innovative ways, some of which we have been using, some of which I would like to try as well. And one other thing that I'd like to add, teaching literature doesn't have to be so difficult. When I was in secondary school, my literature teacher made literature seem so difficult.